All right, everybody, welcome back. So I wanted to go ahead and make a response video. No, I'm just joking. It's a little bit of a response, not a big response. It's mostly a farming guide. So today I'm going to be going over all the different things that you can farm, where you should farm them, and how to do it the most efficiently. And there's going to be some discussion of earlier tiers because, you know, I realize that not everybody is at the end game, but understand that I don't know your current situation. I'm going to do my best to give you some information that's going to be helpful at all stages of the game. And then you can take that and apply it to your own situation from there. And the reason it's a response video is because people were not exactly happy. Some people were, but people were not exactly happy with my recommendation of buying these droid brains over here because they have many other things that they want to spend their ally points. I didn't realize these were such a hot commodity, but apparently they are. So I'm going to go over a little bit as to why you should buy those droid brains, and maybe even if you shouldn't be spending them on what you might be spending them on. So to start, we're going to go over these droid brains. These droid brains are 130,000, 135,000 for 3 droid brains. Now it's a lot of ally points and it's not very many droid brains. I get that. The main issue is that droid brains are a very hard to get commodity in this game. There's really only one way to get them. The other way to get them is actually in the same store, which is all the way down here. If you keep scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, eventually you're going to get to the relic materials, and you're going to see there's 5 available every week in the weekly shipments for 1,500 crystals or 300 crystals per droid brain. Okay, so if you want to buy these, the most you can buy without spending cash is 5 per week. That makes them a very high commodity, very hard to get commodity. Okay, so now the main issue why a lot of people didn't see droid brains as worth it is because of lack of foresight. There's a secondary issue that people have too many. Okay, but I think that also suffers a little bit from lack of foresight as well. This isn't a target at anybody. Everybody's guilty of this. Eventually we all do it because we take a look at our current needs and we compare our current needs to what we currently have and decide that something is more or less important. It's an order of priorities. It happens. Okay, but the fact is that people are saying right now, I have too many droid brains. I have 68. Some people have 150, right? So they're saying 3 droid brains is not anything to Scott. Like there's no reason to buy these. This isn't a need currently because I have so many and it's just too expensive, right? Well, that's not exactly the case because droid brains are so hard to get, right? You can only buy them from the weekly shipments, 5 per week. There's other ways to get them, but they're not guaranteed, right? And they come in at such a rate that when you actually need them, you won't be able to go ahead and just buy them, right? So if we look at like one character, right? If you want to take one character from R8 to R9, it takes 20 droid brains, okay? Well, if you take the weekly shipment, you'd have to spend a whole month buying them at the max price to get them available for that R9 character. So if you immediately need an R9 character and you don't have them in your stores, then you're going to have to go ahead and wait a month of weekly shipment refreshing to go ahead and get them. Now you could win in territory war. That's a possibility. There is a certain area of the game. There's a certain portion of the guilds in the game that have a really high win percentage. So they can almost guarantee that they're going to win their territory war. For those specific guilds that sandbag and take advantage of that opportunity and take, you know, territory war the most seriously, then yes, they have droid brains and they probably don't have to worry about it. When I was in a 95% win rate guild way back when, I was in there for about 2 years and I had more droid brains than I admittedly know what to do with it. But the thing is, back when I was, say 10 million, 11 million GP, where I'm at 13 million now, the game was very different and I had one R9. The only R9 that I had on my account was, let's see if we can find him, Admiralatus. I had him for profundity. That's the only R9 that I had on my entire account, right? So the game was very different when I only had one R9 and I didn't really worry about R9 at all because I had a lot of droid brains because we'd win 95% of our TWs. I was flown in the droid brains, right? Now, fast forward to a situation where I have 33 R9s for various things, and I can go over why I have all those. Droid brains are a very hard to get resource, and when you need them, you're not going to have them if you didn't buy them much earlier, right? So a lot of people buy the weekly shipment anyway. So I'm in a guild with 50 players and we're all at endgame for the most part. And I would say probably half of them are buying the Droid Brains every week. There's a substantial amount of people that have to buy these Droid Brains every week because it's our only access to them besides territory war. And for other reasons, we do not win a lot of our territory wars because we are so high. We're 670 million GP. The guilds that we're going against are 750 million GP. And there's a very stark contrast between the guilds that we face that are 50 out of 50 members joining, whereas we have usually our entire roster joining, and the ones that have 35 to 40 people joining, right? Because sandbagging is a thing. And so that guild has usually decided that 10 or 15 people of their guild in some form of deciding, right? Whether it's like, oh, you can't participate if you don't want to do all these things, X, Y, and Z, or we just need you to sit out so that we can win. They've decided to some degree that those people are going to sit out and their whole guild isn't going to get rewards. Just that portion of their guild is going to get rewards. So that's why we don't actually have a guaranteed Droid Brain income in that regard. So we have about a 1 in 3 win-loss record, right? So 30%. That's roughly 8 to 10 Droid Brains a month. So it doesn't give enough to R9 a character every month. So we have to get Droid Brains from other areas. That's why these are so enticing. Now, the alternative to what people have put in my comments and messaged me and DM'd me about what they are spending their Droid Brain or their ally points on is, well, some people even had problems with Bronzium. They're like, but Bronzium, I have so many problems with Bronzium. How do you get 7,000 Bronzium? I'm going to go over that in a moment, but trust me, these Bronziums are not worth buying and you can get them no issues. I've never had an issue on this account with Bronzium. If you are having an issue with Bronzium, you are not farming the right things. And I will go over the right things to farm, but please don't buy these for ally points unless they get substantially. No, just don't buy them with ally points. If you can buy stuff like this or Zetas for that matter, don't buy them here. Okay. Anyways, another thing, the main thing that people are buying is Datacron currency. Okay, so if 3 Droid Brains is 900 crystals, 300 crystals each, and 1.3 million data cash would be 135,000 ally points, and you could buy 350,000 data cash here. I understand that's 250,000, but it's close enough, okay? For 625 shard shop currency, what you're telling me is that you would rather spend 900 crystals worth of value on the Droid Brain side for 625 shard shop currency. Are we seeing how that's skewed? Are we seeing how that doesn't make sense? So you would never buy it here because you could just buy it here. So if you're buying data cash currency with ally points, stop, because you could just buy it with shard shop currency. Okay, this is a bad deal. Really, 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 really bad deal compared to this. Just buy this. And if you have problems with this and you don't have enough of this to buy, if you're running out of shard shop currency to buy this, well, that's one problem. But that doesn't make crystals less valuable. It doesn't make this more valuable. This is just a bad deal still. You're just such in a hurt for data cash currency that you think you need to buy this. Now, you don't actually need to buy that much data cash currency because you probably think that droid or Datacrons are like the end all be all, right? You're like, I need Datacrons to compete in TW and I need Datacrons to compete in GAC. And the only way I'm going to get them is if I spend a whole lot of ally points on data cash. That's not the case. GAC is designed for you to go 50-50. No matter how much Datacron money you spend, you're going to go 50-50. Now, you might temporarily go 60% win rate. I mean, I've maintained a 60% win rate, so I'll say 60. But the fact is, that's coming to an end because I'm not going to be focusing on PvP anymore. There's a certain point that you reach where you have to spend even more in Datacrons to keep up, really. And it's not as much about keeping up as it is, I just don't want to spend the time in GAC anymore. But the system is designed for you to win a bunch and then lose a bunch, win a bunch and lose a bunch, win a bunch and lose a bunch. The more effort you put in, the more you're going to stay at the same level while you do that. But if you don't put in effort, you're going to sink until you can't sink anymore, and then you're just going to win with the minimal effort, with just logging the 10 points. Okay, I think Nooch Too Good just put out a video showing that he had like 10 across the board. All he did was get his loss, his one attack and lose, and he went 2-1 in a round of JAC. Right, that's in the thumbnail. It happens like that. So you're spending a whole lot to be relevant in a game mode which doesn't really require it. I'll just say that. Like, so do not spend a bunch of ally points on data cash currency. Datacrons are not that serious. If you want to be elite top end, I love Datacrons, I want to be PvP to the most, then this isn't for you, because this is about efficiency, and PvP is like the most inefficient thing in this game. Okay, so I'll just say that. So you can still look at it, try to use the information in order to figure out what materials you should get the most, but if you're super PvP oriented, this guide is not going to help you as much, because the focus is not on PvP, because PvP is inefficient and this guide is about efficiency. Okay, so don't spend them here. When you don't spend them here and you don't spend them on Bronziums, there's not a whole lot to spend ally points on. That makes Droid Brains the best option. Okay, now this video, despite me spending the first 10 minutes talking about Droid Brains, is not about Droid Brains. That was just the initial spurring of the video. So a lot of people ask me, where do I get things like Bronziums? Where do I get things like Electriums? Right? How do I have so many of these things? Well, so let's look at my horde real quick. Let's go over and look at my horde so you can get an idea of what I have a lot of and what I have a little bit of. And the things that I have a little bit of, I don't actually have a little bit of. So we have carbonite circuit boards. This is going to be a hard thing to farm in the early game, because the way that you get this, you have to sacrifice Kyrotechs. I don't recommend people sacrifice Kyrotechs. I think in the early game, you farm Kyrotechs. I'm at a point where I don't need Kyrotechs, so I'm farming carbonite circuit boards. And if you are at the point where you are farming carbonite circuit boards, what you want to do, this is the best strategy I found, is go to light side 1D and just farm this node. Do not spend crystal refreshes. It's not worth it if you're spending crystal refreshes. Okay, just spend your normal accruing energy on this. Stop with the normal energy refreshes. If you're at a point where you have 100% Kyrotechs, you no longer need Kyrotechs for anything, then you would only use your normal energy on this node, essentially. Okay, but if you're not at this point, you need to be farming Kyrotechs, understandably so. You want, I think it's light side 7B, you get Kyrotechs and you get these Data 5 computers, Datapads, MK5 Datapads. Those convert directly into Bronziums at probably the best rate that you can. So if you're at endgame, 1D. If you're not at endgame and you need Kyrotechs still, 7B, and you do your refreshes on there. You can also farm them if you still need a little bit of Kyrotech and you don't want to do your normal energy refreshes. Towards the end of the game, you stop doing normal energy refreshes, okay? You probably have shard farms. You can spend crystals to do shard farms if you want, but don't do those two nodes at the end game, because it just stops being worth it. So what do I recommend if you need the carbonite circuit boards and you are not at endgame? If you're not at endgame, you want to go ahead and farm the 500 crystal packs that come out. They come about monthly. It's 500 crystal packs. You get on average about 150 per pack. It's a range from 100 to 300. Earlier in the game, what I did, I would just buy those with, I'd probably spend 5,000 crystals at a time, get about 15 to 1700 carbonite circuit boards, and never worry about it again. That was the most efficient way. When you do the crystal packs, they're about 3 crystals, 3.5 crystals per carbonite circuit board. The normal crystal value in shipments is 5. This way they're free essentially. So yeah, that's number one. That's carbonite circuit boards out of the way. Moving on to Bronzium wiring. Okay, the reason that I've never had a problem with Bronzium wiring is, one, when you're Kyrotech farming, again, that MK5 Datapad, you get a lot of these, right? They drop so much more often, and they're just, that's their only purpose in the game, really. After a certain amount of characters are geared, that's pretty much the only purpose of them. If I go here, let me see how many I have. Yeah, see, I only have 39. But when you're farming, I've had thousands of these stored up that I went ahead and converted. So that's going to be predominantly your source. The secondary source, even if you're Kyrotech farming, you still want to be doing this. Everybody in the game should be doing this method. Okay, if you go into the guild activity store, you're going to see the shards, the character shards, the 3 spaces before the character shards. 1, 2, 3. Okay, these are what you're looking for is MK4 to MK7 blues and greens only. Okay, don't buy MK4 purples, those are not good. But blues and greens, okay? MK4, 5, 6, and then 7 is for chromium transistors. But MK4, 5, 6 is for bronziums. You want to check these 3 spots every single time, the 3 slots before the character shards. Whatever they are, if they're blue or green and they're MK4, 5, or 6, you buy them. Keeping a stockpile of these will net you a lot of bronziums. You'll never have to worry about bronziums again. The reason is these are selling full pieces compared to this is salvage, right? These are selling full pieces. Full pieces transfer at the highest rate, right? So when we start looking at how much bronzium wire these gives, like they give a lot, right? So I have 100 stored, even though I have 7,000 stored. If you buy these continuously, your problems with bronziums are going to go away. It may take a little bit to start getting up there depending on how much of a crunch you're in, but do not buy these with crystals. Do not buy these with ally points. Don't buy these with anything else. Like, it's not worth it. This is an easy, free to play farming solution, and you're not spending that guild activity currency, at least you shouldn't be, on anything else. These are not a great deal, and you don't need these this badly. Like, I've never ran out of these. I run out of the other mod materials before I ever run out of these. So that's pretty much the only thing you should be buying with this currency, this guild activity currency. Okay, so that solves your bronzium wiring stuff. Chromium transistors, 8,000, never gonna run out of these. This is because these MK7 Blast Tech weapon mod pieces. Where do you get them? Let's see if it shows you. No, don't ever click that. That's not worth it. Okay, you go into the guild activity, you're gonna find 10 Blast Tech weapon mod pieces in this same 3 slots that I showed you earlier. You buy those 2. If you want to, you can buy those 2. You're never gonna run out of guild activity currency just because of those. They don't show up more than everything else does, so you'll buy more bronziums than you'll buy chromium. If you want to, you can stop buying them for a while. Chromium transistors have never been a problem since chromium transistors have been in the game, because you can buy those. Don't, all that crafting stuff, you can worry about that with the BAW transistors or whatever. You can craft for them. You don't really need chromium transistors. They don't come up enough in the game for you to need them. And this is the easiest way to get them. It's so much, because look at the ratio when you transfer one of them. One of those things give you 3. If you buy 1 shipment, you get 10 of them, right? Which gives you 30 chromium transistors, 33 chromium transistors. So the rate is vastly different, 3 to 150 compared to where we're looking at bronzium wirings, it's 2 to 10, right? So just buying a few of those shipments is going to set you up for life because it's full pieces. Okay, so moving on to the next thing, we are looking at Aerodium heatsinks. None of this gear should be transferred into Aerodium heatsinks except one thing. These MK3 CNR holo projectors. You do not want to convert the salvage for Aerodium heatsinks. You only want to convert full pieces, okay? These are go for 250 and these are 5 each. These have a value of, I think, so 20 to 1. 20 salvage pieces creates 1 full CNR holo projector. Well, 20 times 5 is 100. So if you did 20 of these and transferred them over, you'd only get 100 points, whereas 1 full piece gives you 250. So that's why you want to craft these, right? You got to craft and then craft them like this. And these are super easy to get. I'll show you where to get the salvage as well. But you craft them like that first, and then you spend them like that. So you should lock every single other thing in here. You shouldn't even have this unlocked, right? Because you don't want to accidentally spend salvage on them. So this is the only way to get Aerodium heatsinks. You shouldn't use you shouldn't use any other materials. You shouldn't buy them anywhere. You shouldn't buy Aerodium heatsinks outright anywhere. Only focus on MK3 CNR holo projector full mats. Now, how do you get those? Well, you get them from a lot of places in the game. They're considered core gear, so they drop from absolutely everything. But if you need to buy them, if you're in a crunch, it's no problem. You go and use your MK1 raid material currency, and you can buy these things in lots of 125, 150. So like right here, you should never have need for these things, whether it be MK3 CNR holo projectors or Aerodium heat sinks to convert these into. This is all in told 6 CNR holo projectors, gives you a ton of heat sinks, and this refreshes every 6 hours. So if you need Aerodium heat sinks for any reason, this is your primary source and this is your only source. And don't spend your MK1 on a ton of other stuff if you're in the active need for MK3. So you should be able to get as many heat sinks as you need in a week time for whatever your current farm is. This will never be your bottleneck in that regard. Okay. Next, we go over to Electrium conductors. Now, these are the pieces of gear that go ahead and convert into Electrium conductors. Of the 4, you never want to spend the Armatech plating on, because those are the hardest to get and you need the most of them, right? So you could make the argument that you can spend these. It doesn't entirely matter if they're the salvage or the full pieces. The full pieces require 40 purples that of this range. So if you had like a ton of extra purples, then you can go ahead and use the full piece method in order to transfer those into Electrium conductors. That is a possibility. I don't know what your gear situation is, right? It's going to depend largely where you're at and what kind of gear needs you are. But I think if you don't have every character relic, if you don't have a lot of the characters that you currently need relic, then you shouldn't be spending this. There's another way to get Electrium conductors, which you can use. But a lot of this comes to planning out your farms and making sure that you know how many of these pieces, because you don't want to get in the situation where you spent this on Electrium conductors, then you have to refarm all these pieces, because these pieces are actually relatively expensive when you could just buy Electrium conductors another way, right? So the way that you can buy Electrium conductors is the MK3 raid currency. If you go down here, you can see that I'm buying these. These cost 100 of the MK3 currency. Now, for a lot of guilds, this is a huge premium. So the other way is probably going to be the better way if you're not making a ton on the raid. Right now, we're second to max crate. We will be at the max crate once Mace comes back around. But for a lot of guilds, you're not getting a lot of MK3. So I understand this is a huge like premium. So another way you can get these is the territory battle box gives them out, right? Assault battles give them out. They come from a lot of places. So it's going to be dependent on where you're at in the game, what your guild is doing, what your TB crate looks like, what your raid crate looks like, to determine whether or not you want to spend these here or the gear. At the current stage of the game, I don't have a need for gear, so I could transfer them all in. The thing is, the gear comes in kind of slower than the MK3 does for me. So if I do have a new character that comes out, then I have the gear ready to already take them up, and I don't have to worry about farming that gear suddenly, right? So in that way, it's just kind of easier to spend the MK3 on other things. But admittedly, it is cheaper here. So this should be the first stop when I'm out of characters to gear. And the way I would do this is I just spend down to a minimum. If a new character comes out, it usually needs 30 to 60 of these. So you just keep 60 to 120 of each in stock. And that's how you would track your Electrium conductors at that point. So the next stage of the game is Zinbiddle Datacards. Zinbiddle Datacard stuff is even harder to get in terms of the gear. It's more expensive gear in the stores. So you would go ahead and usually spend MK3 to buy these as well, because they're only 125. So the difference between Electrium conductors and Zinbiddles isn't that much in terms of this MK3 currency. It's 100 per Electrium conductor to 125 per Electrium conductor. Whereas you look at this and it's 265 per impulse detector, right? So as you go and get the higher materials, it's more of a premium. But if you need the higher materials, then obviously this is where you kind of need to spend your currency, especially Aeromagnifiers, which can't be crafted. So this is primarily where you would get them. If you want to spend MK2, this goes for Electrium conductors, Zinbiddles, and impulse detectors, and Gyrda Keypads for that matter, you would spend your MK2 currency, which is much easier to get, on the relevant materials. So like these turn into the Zinbiddle Datacards, right? So you would spend this to go ahead and transfer the currency into the relic mats, salvage them into relic mats. And fusion furnaces turn into the Gyrda Keypads. So this is my number one way to farm Gyrda Keypads, because you don't want to spend MK3 at all on Gyrda Keypads. It's a huge premium even over impulse detectors, right? So do not buy these with MK3. You can easily get the gear, and I know it seems like, oh, I need so many furnaces, a crazy amount of furnaces, but gear is a lot easier to get. You have a lot of sources of gear in the game that you're getting, right? So you don't need to worry as much about MK2, and everybody's usually getting the same amount of MK2 because every crate kind of awards the same in that regard. So let's go ahead and go back over here to get the exact pieces. So this is primarily where you would farm those. You're not going to farm these from nodes. It's not really efficient to do so, because for the same price of the gear that you're farming, right? If you're using fleet energy is where you would farm a lot of these gear 12 pieces. You could be farming data cards or keypads, datapads and furnaces and stun guns for keypads. So there's really no reason to spend the same amount of energy to farm lower quality gear 12 technically in order to get data cards, right? It'd be like the same thing spending the same amount of energy to go ahead and get Electrium conductor stuff. This stuff is easier to obtain with MK3. This stuff is easier to obtain with MK3. So if you're going to spend the same energy for the same attempt to get the same amount of gear to salvage, then you want to spend it here for keypads. So that's kind of where my perpetual ship farm is right now, is furnaces. They tend to be needed more than any other gear 12 piece that I've seen. And yeah, so they just permanently farm here unless something else comes into the fleet shop that I need. Now, I know a lot of you are farming shards. That's perfectly fine. Spend the energy on shards. Shards first and then gear. You wouldn't want to do it the other way around because you can't gear characters that aren't farmed to 7 stars. So, with regard to these energy farms, don't forego character shards. Character shards are the most important thing. Okay, so covered Electrium conductors, covered Zinbiddles. You get a fair amount of these from the TB crates. You obviously get less impulse detectors and less keypads from the crates, but you have gear that you can transfer in. The bayonets are the hardest to get, the multi-tools second hardest to get, and then the med packs are the easiest to get. That being said, these don't come in at a rate naturally where it's going to sustain your impulse detector income. So that's where you want to go to the MK3. Okay, and I know I've told you to farm like 3 things through MK3. The Aeromagnifiers cannot be crafted, so this is your way to get them. If you need Aeromagnifiers, this is your priority number 1 farm with MK3. Then second is impulse detectors. Now the reason why is because impulse detectors transfer into, you salvage them at a much higher rate than the other stuff, the data cards and the Electrium conductors. Right? So even though they're more expensive in MK3, if you were going to say, okay, no, I'm going to do the other stuff MK3 and I'm going to get these through MK2, you would spend even higher of a premium, right? 425 compared to 335 for the Zinbiddles, or 285 in the case of some of the Electrium conductor currency, I think. Let's see. No, it's the same. It's still bad. Right? So this is why you want to spend, like, if you're going to be in a situation where you don't need gear as much right now in your current farms, and you need to convert MK2 into gear to salvage for relic materials, Zinbiddles is the most efficient. Zinbiddles and keypads, Gyrda Keypads are the best value here in MK2 because you're paying a huge premium for impulse detector currency or Electrium currency, right? So, that's why MK3 ends up being best for the impulse detectors, obviously the Aeromagnifiers, and then MK2 would be the best for Zinbiddles if you're just translating gear into it. Okay. So Aeromagnifiers, impulse detectors, Electrium conductors is priority number 3 before Zinbiddles, and then Zinbiddles would be last, essentially. Because again, they have the best rate of transfer from MK2 currency. Then keypads are only a Relic 9 material. So we go back to like, oh, well, I don't need Relic 9s right now. Okay, well, if you don't need Relic 9s, don't worry about it, because these come in relatively fast compared to Droid Brains. You're not going to be bottlenecked by your keypads. You're going to be bottlenecked by the Droid Brains and the signal data. Everything's bottlenecked by signal data. But you're definitely going to be bottlenecked by other resources before the keypads. Once you get to the point where you're like, okay, well, I got the Droid Brains and I want to prepare for an R9, then you can start working on keypads. Don't do them through MK3. Just translate them through gear or wait in your farms, in your normal farms, right? So those are how you get impulse detectors and keypads. These are the 3 again that you can farm. You can farm them on fleet energy. Now credits, right? So now let's go into how we're going to spend these currencies, right? Because we covered like where you get the materials. So just to kind of recap where you spend your currencies, right? So we'll start with credits. Credits, you could only buy these 4 things in the shipment tab for credits. Now I actually have a recommendation that I'm not following because I'm so Pavlovian conditioned. When I see things here, I click this. I would make the recommendation that you don't buy anything from this shop. Okay, if you do, it's not the end of the world as long as you're buying credits. But let me tell you a couple stories as to why you don't want to buy from this shop. If you could get out of the habit of clicking anything in this shop, it's for the best. You ever woken up at the time of your refresh at like 6 o'clock in the morning and your eyes are a little blurry and you go and you click this and muscle memory takes over? As soon as you click there, your finger knows what to do. Your finger goes bam right there and you just buy it, right? You don't even look to see what you clicked, you just buy it. So sometimes you buy this, you accidentally click in here, you know your muscle memory takes over, and then you just buy it before it's too late and you realize you bought 32 shards that you don't need and you just bought really expensive shard shop currency. Okay, this has happened to me at least 3 times. It's probably happened to me more and I didn't even realize it, but it's happened to me at least 3 times, right? Now it only takes once for you to spend 1,280 crystals on garbage before you have made it so that none of this is ever worth it. You will never be able to buy enough currencies or enough materials here with credits to justify the 1,280 crystals that you spend on this stupid pack. So for that reason, I actually recommend just getting out of the habit of ever clicking here. This little bit of gear is not worth it. It's going to add up over time. Yeah, you might get a few carbonite circuit boards. You might end up with a few Aerodium heat sinks. All in all, stop clicking in this store is your best bet. But if you are, just buy the things with credits. And that's what you use your credits on. But honestly, I need to get out of the habit of just clicking these things. This is not a good store. Don't be in this store. Okay, weekly shipments, ally points, I already covered. I'm never spending them on anything but Droid Brains, apparently. They are putting new deals in here. This is not always here, right? So this is a phenomenal deal. You should spend credits on this. To the extent that you need Omegas, I probably wouldn't spend 12 million on that, because right here, this is 825 MK1 currency, right? So this is a great deal, especially for people that need to catch up in the game, right? So talking about lower rosters where you don't have everything and you're not on a trajectory where you're going to max out Omegas, you have a lot of catching up to do. You want to spend these whenever you can. The 825 currency here to go ahead and get started on these, buy these. But don't spend this. You'll need credits for a lot of things in the early game that you don't want to spend them on Omegas here. These Kyrotech deals, not worth it. Absolutely not worth it. I hope anybody can see that. Like 400 MK2 per Kyrotech. I don't even know why CG does this. This has been a mystery to everybody ever since the beginning of the crate raid currencies. Also, don't spend while we're here on the weekly shipments, don't buy this. This is not worth it either. Okay. So that covers your credits for the most part, your ally points. Episode currency, episode shipments. If you are not buying the episode pass, you want to buy these, pretty much the Omicron ability mats. This is your cheapest, most efficient way to get Omicron abilities. So just go ahead and buy these and make sure you get your episode currency to the point where you are only buying those. If you have extra episode currency and you are to the point where you are capping out, whether that's because you're buying the episode pass or you've just saved up enough months. The other things that you'd want to look at, occasionally there's really good mods here. I buy these because I'm in a different situation, right? I was buying the episode pass for a little bit, so I had a lot of extra. Don't worry about these, but 5-speed mods, if you see a good 5-speed mod with good secondaries, good set, they'll be about 400 episode currency, so go ahead and buy those. Don't buy the gear, don't buy the shards. Even if you have the shards, I don't think the shards are worth it here, personally, because again, you're trading Omicron abilities, but again, if you're capped out, then maybe the shard currency is worth it. And then your mod materials are what you're going to be focusing on. Primarily these bubblegum looking MK2 thermal exchange units and the microprocessors and probably the circuit breaker modules. Those are the 3 things I seem to be running low on. A lot of people do the microattenuators. I think this is a little bit steep for microattenuators. But again, everybody has different needs and different wants with their mods. I'm not gonna debate over mods. That's a whole nother issue. Don't buy the circuit boards, don't buy the Bronzium wiring. I messed up and bought those early. It's not worth it because now obviously these are on farm mode and I'll never need any of these ever again. And then the gear, not worth buying. It's too expensive. So going into your, what is this called? Cantina battle tokens. 2 things. If you have all the shards farmed, then you don't need to worry about shards, obviously. But if you have shards here, go ahead and use that here. For the other uses of the Cantina battle tokens, you primarily want shard shop currency, especially for those people that I need data cache. Okay, go ahead and buy that here. Something you can buy, which I don't buy, is because it's just not worth it in the long term, is the shipbuilding materials. This material usually, the credits usually become mods. So, but it's at such a terrible rate. You would need 2 million, so you're talking about 20 of these, so you're talking about what, 40,000, right? I only have 24,000, but 40,000 would be like a single mod, so don't really buy these. Shard shop currency is your best bet here. Okay, guild activity currency we already covered. This is where you get your bronziums and your chromium transistors, nothing else. MK1 is going to be used all the way down here. If you need shards, then you can buy these shards. These shards are a great deal if you need shards. Okay, so make sure all these characters are maxed out before you go ahead and start buying other things, really. You're going to get any of your core gear needs here, right? So assuming you're at early game, you're going to buy your MK5 fusion furnaces here, your stun guns, your stun cuffs, all of that stuff. Anything you really need here, you feel free to spend this. You're going to get it the next week anyway. And we're getting the same, whether it's end game or early game, we're getting the same amount of MK1 currency in our crate usually. So go ahead and buy that stuff with, feel free to spend this. If you're at end game and you don't need any of this gear, what you're going to want to do is only buy the mod materials, and early game players can also buy the mod materials. They respawn in the third slot for 100 MK1 raid materials. So I buy this every single time, no matter what it is. I buy these mod materials here for 100. Then you can buy the credits. Be careful because training droids show up here, and nobody should need training droids. But for the normal credits, you want to buy the 100 pack. That's technically efficient by like 1 credit. It's technically more efficient, but by the 625 packs for 1,000,000 credits, this keeps you stocked up on credits for mods for the most part. You could also buy the fleet credits here. It's not too terrible of a deal, and you need those to buy mods as well. So that's where you do if you're endgame. Just basically buy all the credits and buy the mod materials. Moving on to MK2. Again, we've already kind of covered that, but you would cover your gear needs primarily here. But also you're going to go ahead and buy the stuff that translates into Electrium Conductors, Zinbiddle Datacards, Impulse Detectors, and Gyrda Keypads here. Be careful about the purples. You never buy purples here. If anything's purple, don't buy it here. And then you just wait for the right pieces to show up, and keep an eye on the cheaper ones versus the more expensive ones. If you get into a situation where you're farming the more expensive ones, like for fusion furnaces elsewhere, like in fleet energy, then focus your needs on the 285 crystal pieces for your gear, or not crystal pieces, 285 MK2 pieces. Hard to show because I've already bought them, because I'm kind of getting a little at a flat line. I want to be at 100 relatively of those pieces, but things like this go for 285 instead of 335, so it's a better deal. You don't want to be farming this elsewhere when you could buy it here cheaper, if that makes sense. And then MK3, we already covered as you need: Aeromagnifiers, impulse detectors, Electrium conductors, and then Zinbiddles. Don't buy the Zeta materials. Okay. Going into squad arena tokens, there's not a whole lot of use for this. You want to make sure that you have all your ships maxed out in terms of their prestige ability materials, but after that, they're not really focusing on ships, so shouldn't be an issue. Early game, you should be getting all the shards maxed out here. Once you're done with that, then you can start looking at, there's a couple of niche pieces that you might find that you need, like MK3 Gyrda comlinks. You can buy those from here. There's a few of those MK345 blues and greens that we talked about in the guild activity store, right? Sometimes these in full pieces show up here. So go ahead and make sure you check these and buy those anytime they show up for squad arena currency. But if there's nothing then you can convert them into credits if you need credits, but I mostly hoard them and wait for a rainy day. You can translate these really quickly into credits if you absolutely need them, but if you're stocked up on credits, just hoard those. That you don't need to spend them immediately. Buy these whenever you can. The MK345 blues and greens. Going over to Galactic War currency, you should be buying all the characters. Get all the characters and ships that you can maxed out here, right? And occasionally characters do get kicked back here, so you could hoard, because occasionally they do add a couple characters to these. I think I can't remember the last time they did it, but it seems like they've added a few at least. So you can hoard. That's a viable option. To the extent that you're just translating it into shard shop currency, you want to go ahead and buy the ships. The ships are a little bit of a better deal in terms of the amount of shard shop currency you get. I'll go ahead and demonstrate that right now. So if you buy 10 shards, you go down here and it's 150, right? But if you buy the ship, you go ahead and buy those, spend the same amount, it's 152. So you get a little bit more efficient. So these are not hoarded to the extent that you need to just buy everything all the time. I would suggest to buying these, and those little bit of gains are going to build up over time. So that's your use for Galactic War currency. Mods. Okay, well, obviously you are going to spend your credits on mods. The way you're going to do this is you're going to look for 5 speed. If you're really end game, if you're really just like, you got so much stuff you're really looking for, you can buy 4 speed. Occasionally I do buy 4 speed, but it's got to have better secondaries than this, and it's got to match the set. But for the most part, it's 5 speed mods you're looking for. And you would do that with ship and fleet currency, but be careful about spending your fleet currency because you don't want to run out of it. A lot of those capital ship expenses, if you're still farming capital ships and upgrading other ships, they take like 1 million fleet currency, and that's not a whole lot, but it's enough to be annoying and not have it when you're spending them on fleet currency. So if you see a really good mod with fleet currency, go ahead and buy it. Otherwise I would hoard up, 5-6 million, making sure that your fleet upgrades are taken care of before you go ahead and start blowing all this currency on mods. It could also be a very long time until you're going to see the mod, like the ship actually farmed with the shards and everything to upgrade it. So if you have a really long time horizon, then it's okay to spend this because you're going to get it back. Okay, moving on to fleet arena currency. There's pretty much only one thing after you've already got all the shards taken care of, and that's Zetas. So it's really easy. Fleet currency translates directly to Zetas. You don't spend it on anything else. Okay, going into guild event tokens. Okay, so to start, you may need these. I don't think there's any other ways to get like Negotiator and Malevolence and Razor Crest. So to the extent that you need them, Razor Crest you can get from Proving Grounds. Don't buy these. But to the extent that you need Malevolence and Negotiator, I think it's okay to buy those. Get those maxed out. Watt Tambor, I don't know. I'm skeptical on these characters, but if you need them in your early game and there's no other way to get them, go ahead and get them unlocked. So once that's done though, when you're looking at MK1 guild event tokens, right, which are actually a little bit, you don't get a lot of them, you can go ahead and make sure that other things are maxed. I think you can get these all from the other shipments, so get them from the other shipments. It's not worth getting them here. Primarily what you're going to be spending MK1 on is these purples, these Gear 12 purples, like MK6 med packs, MK8 Nubians, MK7 disc things, all the stuff that's really annoying at Gear 12 when you're like going to Gear 12 to get. These things take forever to farm. There's only one other farm spot, which is Shard Shop Currency, where you farm them in this last slot before the mod materials. The last 3 slots before the mod materials. They show up in either of these. But yeah, they're super annoying to get, so I think it's okay to spend your MK1 here, to the extent that you need those. And then GET2 is going to be spent again if you need these characters. You can go and get the characters. Same with MK1, get the characters if you need the characters. MK2, if you actually need the characters, you can. Shards from the ships, you can. But after that, you're going to want to spend this mostly on Kyrotechs. MK2 and MK3 is exclusively Kyrotechs until you no longer really need that many Kyrotechs. After you are done with your Kyrotech farm, then you can start spending them on certain gear. So my Get 2 is exclusively Gyrda Keypad materials. So stun guns, fusion furnaces, and Datapads. Or keypads, fusion furnaces, and stun guns. Yeah. So, but that's again only after you've maxed out your Kyrotechs. The Kyrotech crunch is real until it's not. And when it becomes not real is when you get Zepho and when your guild has started focusing on special missions and you start getting 12,000 GET2 per territory battle. Then all of that gets funneled in here and you don't really need to buy Kyrotechs from anywhere else. GET3-2, the most efficient spending of it is on Kyrotechs. After that, you could do Microattenuators. Personally, I do the impulse detectors that show up here, not the Electrium conductors, not the Zinbiddles, not the keypads, only the impulse detectors. Those are the best deal here. But after that, Microattenuators. A lot of people will say I don't need impulse detectors and just go for Microattenuators. That's perfectly fine too. But get your Kyrotech crunch out of the way. Once that's out of the way, then you could be like, okay, I'm going to spend on other things. Going over to Grand Arena currency. At the end game, this is pretty much mod materials. In the early game, this is pretty much mod materials. You could do Kyrotechs. It's a pretty efficient way of Kyrotechs, but that's really if you're just not getting them in other resources because your guild's not doing hot and TB or something. Usually this is just mod materials for the most part. Don't buy the gear. Okay. Going to Shard Shop currency, then you're going to look at these last 3 slots. This is the only thing I do is look at these last 3 slots and buy the relevant gear, like the hard to get gear. This isn't really hard to get. But yeah, it's those Gear 12 purples and then occasionally the Gear 12 pieces that translate into higher relic mats. You can, I wouldn't buy any of the stuff here. I don't think there's a need to buy any of the fleet shards. You can get those from events. Like this event plays every day. Please don't spend Shard Shop currency on any of this. Saving up for the tokens, the Galactic Legend tokens, especially considering you can't lose these now, that should probably be a pretty big priority. And then lastly is the Datacron shop, spending Shard Shop currency. Admittedly, I have spent a lot of here, but I just don't see the need for a ton of Datacron stuff. I think the farming around them is entirely inefficient. I don't think they actually reward as much as people think they reward, but if you are somebody who really enjoys Datacrons or you're heavy PvP, then you can go ahead and buy the data cache here. So that would be probably the primary source of expenditure for your Shard Shop currency. But I think be careful because that can get out of hand. Personally, I don't know about spending this. Some people do spend 4,000 on a new cron. I know it can feel like those crons never drop in the early days of Conquest. It's entirely up to you. It's not efficient, but it's entirely up to you whether or not you want to do that. So my recommendation would be not to. Same thing with ally points. Don't spend ally points on Datacron materials. So Conquest materials, you don't buy anything in the shop. Well, hold on. There's character shards here. If you're like falling behind on these characters, if you want to get these characters a little bit quicker, then you can. This is really going to depend entirely on your Conquest situation though. If you're making sure that you get the character in 6 months, then you're not going to have a buildup of these. But if you're not making sure that you're going to get at least gold crate to get the character in 6, then I guess you got to do what you got to do. But the best use of this currency, this Conquest currency, is saving it for the Jawas in Conquest. So if you go to Conquest, you go to like the Jawa that shows up, this wandering scavenger, right? You can buy the ones that show up for the new character. You need to buy those if you're trying to do it in 3 conquests, right? Because you'll get 90 from Red Crate. That'll leave you at 270 after 3. And then you would have to buy 20 each conquest for those characters. But if you are delaying, right, and you're getting it in 5, like I am with SM33, my goal is to Red Crate for the 3s, for the 3 that he's out, and then since we don't need pirates for anything, apparently, right now at least, I'm going to go ahead and get Red Crate in the next 2, and that's going to give me 30 shards each of those. So, with that understanding, I don't buy the character shards right now, unless it's somebody that I absolutely want to get in 3. The rest of the conquest currency goes towards signal data. Signal data is the only real bottleneck in this game. I don't care what anybody says. You need signal data. You'll never not need signal data. There's not enough signal data. Signal data is what you go ahead and buy. So I'm moving over towards, if I don't want the character in 3 conquests, then I'm buying signal data and not buying shards. And honestly, you'll make more than you can spend on signal data, so you can either go ahead and expedite that farm a little bit, or buy like an impulse detector or something just so you don't cap out. But other than that, I wouldn't buy any of the other stuff, any of the other gear. I'll go ahead and show you what I can't show you what the end game Jawas look like, but I think it's oh yeah, I can't look at this one either. Towards the end, it's just offering you impulse detectors, I think. Maybe Gyrda Keypads. I would just buy the impulse detectors. I wouldn't buy any of the Zinbiddles or Electrium conductors. Just signal data and the character shards, and if you absolutely need to because you're going to break cap, you can go ahead and spend on an impulse detector or 5 of them or whatever it is. Let's see, is there anything else down here? Galactic Legend tokens, ability, Omicron ability mats. That's the only thing you should buy here. Nothing else is worth it. But I'm sure somebody will have a hot take about microattenuators because people love mods so much. Don't get me wrong, mods are important, but they're not that important. Like comparing 10 microattenuators to ability mat or an ability mat. And yep. Okay. So I think that covers all of the currencies. That covers pretty much everything we got in the game. And it covers all the ability materials that you need and all the gear that you need. Hopefully you got use out of this video. If you did, go ahead and leave a like. Comment down below if you have any questions. I'll do my best to answer them and try to clear up any concerns that people have. And go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell for notifications when I upload a new video. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you all had a good day. Bye.